All right. Hello, everyone. We have Vince Hahn presenting today, who will be sharing some good information. Before we get started, I want to direct your attention to the right-hand side of the screen in Attendify, where we have a poll where you can receive additional resources and materials from the session sponsor. The 3-bar graphic is the poll, so if you want to fill that out, that would be great. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Vince. You're all set.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate your help. Hi, everyone. It's such a privilege to be part of Learning Solutions 2021. So happy to be here, and thank you for taking the time and joining me for this session. Creating chatbots for learning on Microsoft Teams, Slack, and other platforms. So excited about getting into this content with you. I will be looking at the chat in Attendify, as well as my colleague, Corey Richards, will also be on there. So please ask questions along the way. We'll be happy to answer them. So let's get started. Let me first introduce myself. There we go. A little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of Mobile Coach. I'll talk a little bit about myself and our platform later as we get into chatbots. But I'm a tech entrepreneur. I've founded several companies throughout my career, and currently live in the beautiful state of Utah. A little bit about Mobile Coach now, I guess at the bottom of the slide. We are a chatbot authoring platform. So just had a lot of experience with lots of different kinds of chatbots, and today we'll be focused on chatbots for learning and how you can enable them on workplace collaboration platforms like Microsoft Teams. So to get started, I always like to sort of make sure when we use the word chatbot, we're talking the same language. So a lot of us as consumers have had experiences with chatbots where you go to some sort of website. And there are kind of two typical website type of chatbot experiences. One is you are a customer, and then you maybe have a question. So a chat window pops open, and it's like an FAQ, an automated FAQ user experience. I've kind of got a little bit of a screenshot here on the left of the screen that you can see. Or sometimes you go to some website and you're checking out some product, and a chat window pops open, and it's a sales chatbot saying, hey, what can I tell you about our product? And that's the type of experience I think a lot of us have had experience with. Now, those types of chatbots are meant to sort of give us some immediate feedback, but they're very transactional. And what I mean by that is when you see the chat window pop open, you make a decision, do I want to interact with this or not? If you do, you might have a question or two, but then you're done with it. And you actually never see the chatbot again unless you were to come back to that website. On the right hand of this on the screen, I'm showing a little trigger happy with my mouse today. I'm showing a screenshot of a chatbot on a common mobile messaging platform. I think I have my phone somewhere with me. This is a screenshot of a chatbot on an SMS channel. And a chatbot of this nature is like, if we put on our instructional design hats, what's the difference? With a chatbot on the left, when you have a consumer experience, is very transactional. You're just trying to get people to click on a button that you think that the most common issues people have. A chatbot on a common mobile messaging platform, you actually can create a relationship, have the chatbot create a relationship with the user, because whereas on the website, you're cut off as soon as that person leaves the website, on a common mobile messaging platform, like SMS, you're never cut off from that user. So other common mobile messaging platforms might be WhatsApp, Facebook, Telegram, Line. In fact, it would be fun in the chat if you could put in the chat what are some other common mobile messaging platforms you use to interact with friends, families. Maybe you've got family internationally. I have about 10 mobile messaging apps on my platform because I've got friends all over the world. Some I use Telegram. I use Kakao for my relatives in Korea. Put in the chat and let me know what what messaging apps you use. And also, if I'm not, can everyone see my screen? Because I think I'm screen sharing. I see that Tonia's saying no presentation is showing up. So if someone can just let me know that some people can see my screen, that would be wonderful. So Discord, I get that a lot too. I'm seeing that as a more popular platform. There's a new messaging platform called Signal. I don't know if any of you are using that. Liz is using Signal, great. In the middle is sort of the combination of both of these user experiences, where you can have a web-based portal or maybe a desktop portal where it's user-specific messaging. And so Microsoft Teams would certainly fall into this. But you could put a chatbot on your LMS, for example. And so someone's logging into the LMS, and whereas on the left-hand side, the chatbot treats you as an anonymous user. If you go there every day, it won't remember you, and you just start the experience again. In the middle here, if you've got a login, the chatbot can now know who you are, and so that the chatbot can be much more specific. So anyway, I'll probably belaboring the point there a little bit, but basically a chatbot is a computer simulated conversation, and the experience you get will be very different based on what modality you find that chatbot, whether it's on a website and it's treating you as a prospect, or if it's on the right-hand side and it's on a mobile messaging platform, it's treating you as someone that the chatbot's helping you or trying to help you learn something or nurture you along. So with that, let's talk about why chatbots in the first place. Why would an organization want to consider using a chatbot, especially with their learners? Well, a chatbot can drive a lot more learner engagement. So chatbots are what we call conversational interfaces. And so that means that you don't have to learn a new software. I remember, so I have 4 children, and they're all out of the house. My youngest is a freshman in college. And a few years ago, when TikTok was really starting to become popular, I remember my daughter was using TikTok, and like any good parent, I wanted to get on and make sure, what is she doing? What is she posting? And I pride myself as a technologist as getting, to be up to speed on all the latest technology things. That's what I do. I build software, and so I'll download this TikTok and try to figure it out. Put in the chat if you're a TikTok user. Love to see what our demographic is like. And so when I downloaded it, I will admit sheepishly that I was very confused on what do I swipe? How do I find her? Like, what is left and right? And it was very counterintuitive for me. I was using a lot of cognitive cycles to try to figure out how to use this app. And so I actually had to call her over, and she showed me how to use it. I guess that's just inevitable as the older that we get. But I like to tell that story, and I don't know if any of you can relate to that, where user interfaces can be very confusing, and that can be an impediment to people using that software. Whereas a chatbot is just a conversation. Everybody knows how to message. And so that's one really important benefit of a chatbot, why you'd want to consider using it. Also, instant responses. We live in this world of instantaneity, and we're in a Google, grew up in this Google world where we're just used to thinking if I've got a question, I can get an answer absolutely instantly. Now, whether it's the right answer or not, we don't know. But we have this expectation for instant responses, and so that's what a chatbot can do. And also, you can put a chatbot on anywhere where there's messaging. We really alluded to this a little bit with messaging platforms. So whether you use WhatsApp or SMS or Teams or Facebook, you can have chatbots on those channels. And so that means I don't have to go anywhere new. I like to maybe sum up the more user engagement with the idea that chatbots are frictionless. And any click or any destination or a username and password or all these things that someone would have to do to get to learning content, these all create friction. And so chatbots, to me, represent the most frictionless way to get content to a user. From an organizational perspective, you get the benefit of scalability. Chatbots never sleep. They're on 24 hours a day. They can have many conversations with thousands, tens of thousands of conversations at once. They can speak multiple languages. So you're able to scale the resources the conversations happening in your organization over and over and over again, you can really get the benefit from chatbots. And so those are reasons why you'd want to consider chatbots in your organization. So what about some use cases? What are some common use cases? Let me go to the next slide here. Really, I'm not doing presentation mode so that I can have my other monitor up, but like it's there we go, just very sensitive to my mouse. All right, so I'm going to walk you through some really common use cases. I have my colleague Corey Richards on the chat, and she's going to copy and paste these links for you in the chat so you don't have to like try to type them down. But each use case, you don't have to try these, it's just totally optional for you. But these are all examples of what I call chatbots for learning, or programmatic chatbots, chatbots that are engaging a learner over time. And this will just give you an idea of what the user experience would be like. So a very common use case is training reinforcement. This idea where this learner is going through some formal education track, whether it's instructor-led, virtual, or in classroom, if that's coming back anytime soon, or if it's a blended or a space type of learning. There will be these formal learning activities that the learner is participating in. And no matter what modality you have your training, there's going to be a reinforcement challenge or a reinforcement opportunity. And the way, especially if you're teaching skills that need to be applied. And so a chatbot on a mobile messaging platform is a wonderful use case because you can have this micro-learning, this spaced experience that's very frictionless, where the chatbot could be sending nudges, reminders, holding a learner accountable to goals that they've made or commitments that they've made to really apply this learning. So wonderful use case. I see typically training reinforcement chatbots lasting like maybe 2 to 3 months. And it's not a lot of content to keep this fresh for people. You could send proactive nudges once a week, twice a week. So it's not overwhelming, but you'll see remarkable results in terms of that type of engagement after the formal training is over to really reinforce that training. So that's training reinforcement use case. The next one is onboarding. To me, it's very similar. If I don't know what your organization's orientation is like for new hires, but oftentimes it's overwhelming. It's hooking up a new hire to a fire hose, so to speak, and giving them way too much information during that orientation period that they can absorb. So instead of doing that, why not pace the orientation information in a more reasonable, time-lapsed way, almost like a journey over time. And with new hire onboarding, the chatbot could be enabled to be smart, not only to cover administrative things like, hey, your healthcare forms are due by this date, or hey, make sure you fill up, finish our required security and compliance training by this date. But it could cover things like, cultural expectations, helping that new hire get acclimated to socially with work. Connecting that new hire with all the benefits, employee benefits that you might have. A lot of great angles to take with a chatbot if you can, have some time to engage with them. And I've seen really nice new hire onboarding chatbots that are very effective that last 30, 60 days, maybe sending them something a little bit more frequently than training reinforcement, something like maybe once a day. You can also program the chatbot to be a resource available for that new hire 24 hours. So if they've got a question, they could just ask the chatbot questions like that. So try this one out if that's interesting to you. But a new hire onboarding is a wonderful use case for chatbot. This next one I think is going to be one of the huge use cases for the future of learning, and that's performance support. Your organizations have invested a lot over the years around resources for their employees and to help them be successful. But again, a lot of times these resources there's too much friction between where those resources are and in the moment of need for that employee. So if I know that, wait, I'm stuck, I don't know how to do this task, What are my options? I can call my manager or a colleague, but that got to make sure that they're available, and I don't know if I want to bother them. I know there's a job aid somewhere, and there's that link in the intranet, company intranet. I guess I'd have to remember my password, and then I have to go search for it, and then read it and find it. Of course, all of those things I think we all know will inhibit people from getting the help that they need. What if I could just pop open a chatbot and just ask the question that I have? Chatbots, the goal, of course, as we mentioned earlier, chatbots are meant to automate all of these things, but they don't have to be 100% automated. You can think of a chatbot as being the first line of defense in terms of being a concierge for your target learner and your audience. So if the chatbot can answer my question, then that chatbot on my behalf could go find a subject matter expert or find a human resource for me to answer my question. And what a great service that could be. So performance support's another, I think, a really exciting use case for chatbots in the future. I've been working on chatbots for about 8 years, and the first number of years when the technology was really quite nascent, a lot of the use cases were sort of just glorified reminders, I would say, just a way to leverage the messaging channel that I was interested in, and sending programming, just very simple messages to be sent out. Lately, I'm seeing people, first of all, I think that people are very accustomed to interacting with chatbots, and then instructional designers are becoming more adept at understanding how to build a conversational driven learning experience. And so it's been fun to see lots of examples of actual more in-depth learning taking place via a conversation, via a chatbot. So it's this idea of micro-learning where could you take your typical 30-minute e-learning course where there's some slides with some voiceover and maybe some intermittent assessments just to make sure you're staying awake and understanding the topic. So take that traditional thing, 30-minute type of e-learning course. Could you convert that into a conversation via a chatbot that instead of 30 minutes lasts a few minutes a day for a week? And if you can, then what would the learning effectiveness be? How would it be impacted? Would people learn better? Would people enjoy it better? Would you get a better net promoter score on it? Would people pay more attention instead of having one screen where they're trying to just do the minimal amount of work to pass the course? Would the overall quality be higher? Now, of course, the answers to my rhetorical questions now are all sort of depends, but I've seen examples where absolutely the learning experience is much better through a conversation. So this particular demo here, if you'd like to try it, is a pretty fun chatbot where over about a week it will teach you 7 common biases around, like unconscious bias and things like that. So I would be curious if any of you would try this out. It does last about a week to see, how effective is the learning experience. And so microlearning is another really interesting use case for chatbots. This is a fun one where raise your hand if your company has too many acronyms or if the industry that you work in has just tons of acronyms. Of course, I think most of us know that we're an acronym-heavy society. So, like, imagine this scenario: you're a new hire, and your first week of work, you're there to impress. You want to make sure that you're gonna show yourself well, and you're in a meeting, a conference call, and people are, flying these acronyms left and right. You have no idea what people are talking about. Are you going to stop the meeting and ask for clarification on an acronym? Yeah, probably not. So what if there was a chatbot available? And if you go to Google, of course, you can Google acronyms, but the acronym for a certain term in my company might be very specific to my company, so it wouldn't be on Google. To me, this is a fantastic use case where I'm in a meeting, if I have Teams open and I know there's an acronym bot there to help me, and I can just put in that acronym, explains what it is to me, I can just keep up in the meeting. What a great job aid that could be. So This slide, I apologize, looks like a copy and pasted the unconscious bias demo here again, but I'll have my colleague Corey in the chat put in the correct acronym bot if you'd like to try that out. So I think this is kind of a neat use case. And it looks like Corey copy and pasted the same bias course, but she'll go ahead and find the right one. So I'd love for you to try this one. Let's now, so those are some, hopefully for the first part of this presentation, I wanted to define what a chatbot was, what are some examples for chatbots for learning, why would an organization even care about that? So hopefully that got some light bulbs turning on in your mind. Please put in the chat if which one of those use cases seem most applicable to your organization. Is it training reinforcement, new hire, onboarding? Is it performance support? Is it micro-learning experiences? Would love to just get some of your feedback and ideas in the chat of what use cases seem to apply best for you. Jennifer says all of them. So that's certainly true with our company. Now, let's transition into workplace collaboration tools. So, of course, with COVID over a year ago, one thing I experienced with a lot of the conversations I was having with learning teams was something like, hey, we're all working from home now. We've had Microsoft Teams for years, but no one's ever used it. Now everyone's using it. And the same goes with Slack or Webex Teams, and there are other workplace collaboration platforms as well. Zoom, of course, what we're on now is one. It just so happens that all these platforms support chatbots, which I think is fantastic. It's fantastic for several reasons. One big reason is that now that everyone's accustomed to using them as collaboration, you can have a chatbot be a colleague that you're interacting with in this platform. Another big reason why I think this is fantastic is that we live in a world where we have IT, privacy, and security teams for good reason. To comply to regulations, to keep user data private, to keep employee data private. Those are really important reasons. But a lot of times, common mobile messaging apps like Facebook or SMS, our IT teams are going to discourage us from using them as a communication tool within our teams. I've seen that over and over again. And I would suspect that there's someone in your organization who really wanted to use SMS as a way to interact with employees, but got shut down by IT and or privacy and security. The nice thing about these types of platforms is that because they're collaboration platforms and you can configure them where IT and your IT team can approve them, now you've got a channel that's approved from an IT perspective and everybody's using it. So I think it's a really exciting development for as really another learning platform, not only with chatbots, but just a way to reinforce learning anyway. So that's what really spurred this idea, like, hey, I want to show people how to use these collaboration tools and chatbots together. So what we're going to do now is walk you through how you would set up a chatbot in Microsoft Teams. Now, the first step is you need a chatbot. And so that's the step one, is to design your chatbot. And we don't have time today to go through. That's like a whole different workshop that I actually have given in years past about how to design a chatbot, what are the best practices, what tools can I use to design a chatbot. There are a lot of chatbot authoring tools out there. So I'm only going to spend a few minutes on it today because I want to get to the meat of it okay, once you have a chatbot, then how do I get that onto Teams? But this is step one. This is a screenshot of my company's authoring tool, Mobile Coach. We're a chatbot authoring tool. We call ourselves a no-code authoring tool. There are lots of other chatbot platforms as well, and if anyone's interested in a list of chatbot authoring tools, I'll put my email address at the end, or Corey can drop it into the chat right now, vince@mobilecoach.com. I'd be happy to send you a list. At a high level, just some, this might be unfair to some of these providers, but here's just a broad categorization of chatbot tools. You have tools that are like heavy developer tools, very robust developer-centric tools like Amazon Alexa, or the Lex platform. You've got Google has Dialogflow. Microsoft has a bot platform, a bot platform that you can use. The documentation is there for anybody to use it, but in reality, it's pretty techy. So you really do need some development chops to be able to manage that. And then you have some very, I would say, use case specific chatbots. So like there are chatbot providers that just specialize in customer service or just specialize in like sales funnel experiences. So depending on how you want to use a chatbot, some of those can be really wonderful tools because they're almost like turnkey. And then you've got like no code platforms like a mobile coach. And then, I would say one more thing is that you've got a lot of chatbot platforms are architected for customer service. And so they're very machine learning heavy where you just teach it a couple of things and it relies on millions of interactions to have it get smarter over time. And then you've got platforms like Mobile Coach, which are more rules based where, hey, I want to design a storyboard journey over 2 to 3 months. And here's my learner profile, my demographics. Here's a channel that I want. I want to make sure we're avoiding Fridays, and I want to just send messages on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so you've got all these very specific requirements on what chatbot should do. So that's what the Mobile Coach platform's designed to do. So we do a lot of chatbots for learning in our platform. But that gives you an overview of the types of chatbots out there. So regardless, step one, if you want to put a chatbot on Teams, you need to build that chatbot. So let's say that you've built it and designed it, and now you want to integrate it with Teams. So you choose your collaboration platform. I'm going to focus on Teams today, and I'll mention Slack and Webex Teams here in a minute too. So the first thing that you do is Microsoft Teams runs on Microsoft Azure. And part of Microsoft Azure, if you go into Azure, you can just search for bot services, and this is something that they do. And really easy. I'll just make a mention that depending on how your company uses Teams, you can ask whoever the Azure administrator is for your company to cooperate with you. You can actually create your own Azure account yourself and do this yourself. Now, that will be driven by policy and if you're allowed to do that, but that's certainly available to you as well. So anyone with an Azure account could come in here and click on bot services to add a new chatbot. So you click on add. Pretty simple. And then next thing that you do is that you'll click on create. And by the way, I also have these instructions in a nice Word document too, if anyone's interested in that. And so then you will register your bot channel. So let's just talk a little bit about this. Your bot handle has to be unique, but it will not be visible to users. So you don't have to think that because it has to be unique, you might worry about, well, what if it's too technical? And it doesn't really matter. It's just something you have to remember. But your end users aren't going to have to recognize that handle, so you're good there. Then and by the way, you'll choose what the bot display name is a little bit later in the process. And then depending on where you built your chatbot, there'll be a messaging endpoint that you'll put in here. So if you built your chatbot on the Mobile Coach platform, it gives you an endpoint that you drop into here. Then next thing you do is this is the page where you can put the display name. So here's an example of a display name for this chatbot. Then it will generate this Microsoft App ID that's circled down here. So this is an ID that you'll need to create the connection between the Azure platform and where you've created your chatbot logic. And so you'll have to remember that. And then you'll click on Manage, this Manage button here, and that will reveal your secret. So you'll get a new client secret. So this is like the password. So for security, you'll get the Azure App ID and then the secret that you can generate. So you click on New Client Secret. Then what you do is you add a description to the secret. And for security, you can decide when this secret expires, in 1 year, in 2 years, or never. So those are the choices that you have right now. So you can see that, there are a bunch of steps, but as long as you follow these, it's pretty straightforward. So then the next thing you do here, so you'll copy the value over here. So you'll only be able to copy this once, because once you leave this screen after you create your secret, you won't be able to receive it again. So you copy this and you keep this in a really safe place. And that's really it. So then the next thing you do is now your chatbot is enabled with your Azure account. And so your Azure account knows where the chatbot is, and they're talking to each other because you've just created that ID and secret. So the last thing that you do is now you choose what channel that you want. And so when you go to this, the channels section of your bot channels registration, you'll see a Teams logo. You'll click on that to add it to Teams. And then it's very simple. You just click on that, and then it will show up as one of your channels. And then if you right click on this, you'll get a link. And so if you tried any of the demos that Corey put on for you for Teams, this is all we did. We registered it, and then we right clicked it, got a link address. And if you tried any of the Teams chatbots during this presentation, that's a link that you got. So it's as simple as that. And that's what you do. And then there's, I will say, there's a couple ways that you can choose to have users access Teams. The way that I just showed you with these slides was via the link. And so the link allows you to just share the chatbot with only the people you're sharing the link with. So it won't show up in an overall search. And but when someone adds it, and so they tap on the link and they add it, they'll always have access to that chatbot. So it's very easy, and what I just showed you doesn't require, other than getting access to your Azure account, there's no IT reliance. Or if you create your own Azure account, you don't need IT at all. So it's what I just showed you is a really easy way to do it. There is a way to make a custom app of your chatbot and then have that appear in your Teams instance. Takes a little bit more steps and does require your IT team, because this has to be part of your Teams or your organization's Azure instance. But basically you package the chatbot, and there's a way to do that, and then give that package, which is a zip file, to your Azure admin to install it. So the benefit to doing it that way, which is a few extra steps, is that now anyone in your Azure environment can actually search for the chatbot. You don't have to rely on the link. They can search for it and find it and then add it themselves. And so there's pros and cons to both ways. And this is true with most collaboration platforms. They'll give you options on how to distribute your chatbot and have your chatbot appear. And so we try to help you with that. We've got documentation. We always are trying to stay up on top of these things. And from time to time, these companies will change things, and so we're trying to monitor that as well. But that's basically the two major ways to think about putting a chatbot onto Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to pause there, and before I talk about Slack and Webex, let me see if there are any major questions that I can address. Corey, do you want to unmute yourself, and are there some questions that you've saved for me to answer?
Yes, let me grab them.
And then hang on for those of you that are interested in Slack and Webex. I will talk about them in a minute.
Yeah, so Tanya asked, can you update your bot as content changes, or do you need to create a new one? So
the answer is you absolutely should have a process where you're updating your chatbot over time. So you don't have to create a new one. One of the great benefits of a chatbot is that if you've ever been part of like a software launch, like you're launching a new website or launching a new app, updating it can be really difficult, and A/B testing can be really difficult. because you're relying on a user interface. And so, and with an app, you're relying on an Android version or iOS version or a Windows version. With a chatbot, it's just conversations, and so it's really easy to do some A/B testing. And A/B testing is so important for any program. So let me just give you an example. Let's say that you want to know the difference between sending a reminder at 10 a.m. versus 2 p.m. With software, that's hard to do. With chatbots, it's really easy to do. And so I give that example in answer to Tanya's question because whatever chatbot tool you're using should make it easy for you to not only update content if it needs to be updated, but also to have you iterate and experiment with different strategies and even personality with a chatbot. Do you want to try to have your chatbot make people laugh and send emojis and animated GIFs and things like that? It's really easy to experiment and get to a design that is optimized for your audience. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You got.
It looks like most of the other questions I haven't answered yet are asking about the other channels. So
all right,
probably a good time to segue into that.
Awesome. So for Slack and Webex Teams, it's actually pretty similar. It's a very similar overall process where you have to have your chatbot, and then you have to connect it with your Slack instance or Webex Teams instance. Let's see. So let me just show you some Slack, and then I've got some other design principles I'll share. But here's just some use cases or some screenshots for Slack. And again, I do have instructions on this. And so if people would prefer like a Microsoft Word version versus these slides, just ping me and I'd be happy to share them with you. But you'll find this is very similar where come in here, you want to create an app. Now with Slack, there are more choices than with Microsoft Teams. So Slack was built from day one as a full-on workplace collaboration tool. And so there are a lot of security options that Slack gives you. Like you can assign who can create an app. You can cut and sort of divide your audience. There's lots of different. So because of that, there are a few more hoops to jump through. But again, they do have user interface that walks you through everything that you need to do. Here's a good example where with Slack, you can have all these authorization knobs and dials that can drive who does what. So, that's maybe an added complexity with Slack, is that you have to be cognizant of permissions and things like that. So hopefully that helps you, but really the basic idea is similar. You just go through these screens and it will walk you through how to set up your chatbot. Webex Teams is out of the three the easiest. It's super easy to create a Teams at a Webex Teams chatbot. So again, I've got some screenshots for that too for anyone interested in that one. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about some other light bulb ideas for cool chatbots or chatbots I think could be interesting. Similarly to the acronym bot that I was mentioning, I think a contact lookup chatbot could be really cool, especially on Teams. Or I'll use Teams. Every time I say Teams, if you're a Slack or Webex Teams person, just think whatever platform you're on. But imagine hopping onto a conference call similar to that use case I was talking about with acronyms. There's 10 people on this call. Who is everybody? And so while you're on the call, just asking the chatbot who people are, and you get a little contact ID back. I think that could be a compelling user experience. I think chatbots too can be great as the more personalized you can make them. So if you can interact with like an internal platform like your LMS, then all of a sudden the chatbot can be that much more useful. So let's say that you've connected your chatbot with your LMS, and so just on Teams, without having me have to go to the LMS, I could just ask, "Hey, chatbot, is there a course on cybersecurity?" And it comes back, "Yeah, here's 4 courses. And based on your job function, here's the one that's right for you." I think that could be a really compelling user experience. And a lot of the examples I've given you today for chatbots are very functional and practical, but a motivational quotes chatbot, something to help someone feel better, We've done some work lately on an anti-burnout chatbot to help people have more energy in their lives. It's just really rewarding work. I think there's ways outside of sort of functional areas where you can just help people feel better and feel happier at work. I think it could be a great use case for a chatbot. And if you've got an outside sales team, boy, frictionless is the name of the game for that demographic typically. So chatbots that are on their mobile devices that can help them interact with their CRM, give them reminders, prompts on how to prioritize their time, I think can be fantastic use cases. Just a couple words on when you're designing your chatbot, especially for these workplace collaboration platforms. Here's some best practices just to really run through these quickly before our time is up. A lot of the user experiences I mentioned today are having the chatbot pushing out proactively messages to your target audience. We did talk a little bit about pull. So push versus pull is a term borrowed from the marketing world, but it's really this idea of what are you going to proactively push out to your learners versus what are they going to pull on demand. Having a blended experience makes for a wonderful chatbot experience. And so, let's take training reinforcement as an example. For your training reinforcement use case, you've got these periodic nudges that you've planned, but you can tell people, hey, if anytime you want a reminder about these 4 topics, just text me, and then I'll provide these reminders for you. It's a really nice way to blend push versus pull. Considering the medium, this is like considering the channel that you're in. So if you're developing a chatbot for teams, just to understand, do I want to put rich text or emojis or images in there or videos, and how is that going to look? And so really considering the medium as you're designing the chatbot experience is important. Noting that you can put in not just text messaging, but you could put in images and videos and links to PDFs or even deep links into other systems. It's a great way to utilize a chatbot. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the more personalized the message is going to be to a user, the more impactful that chatbot's going to be. So adding some personalization. Easy personalization would be having the chatbot learn the user's name. Other sort of easier type of personalization, ask the user for their timing preference. The chatbot could say, hey, I can send you a reminder in the afternoons or in the mornings. Which would you prefer? That type of personalization can make a big difference. A more sophisticated personalization would be if you're integrated with your LMS to have the chatbot run some sort of algorithm and say, hey, Vince, here are 4 courses that I think I'd like to recommend for you. That type of personalization can be extremely powerful, a little bit more sophisticated, but if you can pull that off, I think it makes for a very, very powerful user experience. Clear expectations. You want to make sure that that your users aren't expecting to have a chatbot be emotionally intelligent, because the technology is not there to do that yet. That it's not asking questions out of its scope. And so I always like to have the chatbots, when they introduce themselves, set very clear expectations like, hello, I'm your training reinforcement chatbot. I'm going to interact with you for the next 60 days. Here's what I do. Here's how to opt out. Here's what I don't do. And so people will receive that like, okay, I get it. And so setting those expectations will ensure a smooth and nice user experience for people. I already talked about iterating and A/B testing in response to Tanya's question. I think that's a really, really important aspect of designing a chatbot. And then you know what? A chatbot, because it's a conversation, is perfectly positioned to get user feedback. You don't have to get the user to go to some other survey. Just have the chatbot ask, how am I doing? What messages what messages from the messages I've sent to you, which ones have been the most valuable? Which ones have felt the least valuable? Tell me, do you want more messages, less messages? It's just perfectly positioned to get this immediate feedback, and that will help you perfect your chatbot. So those are just some quick design tips that I wanted to share. So so I wanted to tell you about chatbots, tell you about the power of putting them on a workplace collaboration platform. And hopefully you saw that today. All these ideas for chatbots, getting it right on Teams for your learners, just to be a click away. It's just, I think, is a fantastic user experience, and just some examples on and design tips on doing that. So I've mentioned a couple of resources for you. Again, any of these resources that are interesting to you, email me at vince@mobilecoach.com. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. There's my LinkedIn. Great, just I talk about chatbots a lot on LinkedIn, so it'd be great to communicate with you there. So pausing there, I know we're at time. I believe we get just a few minutes of grace period, but thank you for joining. I appreciate your time. And if for any of you that have extra questions, I'm going to hang around just for a few more minutes. I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Vince. If anyone has any, or if anyone wants any additional resources from the sponsor, be sure to fill out the poll on the right side of Attendify. It's over there if you need it, and the chat will remain open if you have any extra questions. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.